Then we get into number 2, because now we're going to talk about what we're doing in terms of those issues that go on that cause us, and you mentioned the genetics.
Right.
That's where Luminate comes in.
Fave.
Now, before I get into Luminate, there's 4 areas of technology.
Okay.
This particular product, the study was presented in a peer-reviewed medical journal, the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology. Now, every industry has their journals. And for example, in aesthetics, there's Les Nouvelles and there's Skin Inc. and Dermascope, and doctors have all their journals. Very few of them are peer-reviewed. It can take months or years to get in a peer-reviewed medical journal, highly scrutinized. And you don't see skincare products, you see cancer drugs. You see articles on serious skin diseases. So it has to be very significant to the medical community. This study was published, and in the study, it was a head-to-head comparison, a half-face comparison with prescription hydroquinone.
Mm-hmm.
That's considered the gold standard for discoloration, and it's controversial these days, but
Right.
nevertheless, it's the gold standard. We outperformed prescription hydroquinone.
Oh, bravo.
Now, why is that? So there's 4 areas of technology. Now, the first area, remember I said everybody, remember tyrosinase, is that it has what we call tyrosinase inhibitors. Now,
Right.
that's not real uncommon, because, you know, most products that claim to help with discoloration have tyrosinase inhibitors. But these are tyrosinase inhibitors that really have some good medical validation. And there's things like alpha-arbutin and kojic acid and dipotassium glycoside and on and on. Now, the second area, though, is a game changer. So here's where some of the genetics come in. We all have what's called a melanocyte-producing hormone. So this hormone is in our body, and we pretty much have the same amount of this hormone, whether you're a redhead, really fair skin and freckles, or whether you have lots of pigment in your skin and your skin's dark. But you might have more if you're on birth control pills, and you might have more.
True.
Okay? But that hormone plays a role in how you react genetically to your sun exposure. And as I said, some people go outside for 10 minutes, they pigment. Some people go, you know, they want to go on a picnic, they want to go on a boat ride, they pigment. They sit in a hot car, they pigment. And others don't have the same propensity. So that has so much to do with your ethnicity and your genetics.
Right.
How you're going to react. So for the first time, we have a peptide that downregulates that hormone.
That's the magic key right there.
That's one of them, but it is something that really hasn't been done before. Now, third area of technology, we have turmeric. So turmeric is a very powerful tyrosinase inhibitor, and it's been used for centuries in India, for example. And what people would do is they'd put it on their skin, and even in 3 or 4 days, they'd get bright, but the whole time they're bright yellow. And they've tried to take turmeric root, and they've tried taking various portions of it, and could they kind of duplicate it? And it just doesn't work the same way. For the first time, we've been able to take the active chemical, make it colorless, and it has an exceptional effect. Plus, it is anti-aging.
And isn't it also an anti-inflammatory?
It is.
Because a lot of us are taking it for joint things, so that's interesting. So that makes sense because, I mean, hyperpigmentation and discoloration is an inflammation. So, bing, ding, ding.
Inflammation plays a big role, and aging in general is inflammatory based.
Right.
So it's great also for anti-aging. Now, the fourth area, and this is actually the most profound.
Okay.
We have retinol.
Right.
Retinol works, number one, to get the old pigment out of the surface. It does that very well.
Oh, so it works. Okay.
It also works in helping to make the skin, it helps with acne. It's one of the gold standards for acne. Retinol also is profoundly de-aging. And it
Right.
literally transforms how the skin functions.
Right.
This is a medical fact. It thins and compacts the stratum corneum. You want a really thin, compact stratum corneum that looks like a baby skin.
Mm-hmm.
And you want a nice, thick dermis.
Dermis, right.
Dermis thins. Starts thinning about 1% a year when you're in your 20s, but it can thin a lot more if you've had a lot of sun exposure and lifestyle. Get into your 60s and 70s, you've lost 60 to 70% of your dermis. It looks bad. So it can thicken it up to twice as much.
Perfect.
But here's where it gets, again, into the genetics and into how your skin is going to function differently. So when you look in the mirror and you start to see whether it's little fine lines or textural changes, larger pores, discoloration, and you say, I don't like it, but it happens to everyone. It's inevitable. 90 to 95% of what you could perceive as being inevitable is from sun exposure. And it was programmed into your DNA before the age of 10 and at least 50% before the age of 20. Okay? That's just the way it is. I liken it to, let's say you were an astrologer and you're looking through a telescope and you're looking out into the stars. They say that what you see out there is actually happened about 150 or 200 years old because of the way that light travels. It's the same thing. You look in the mirror at your skin, you're looking at what happened before the age of 10. Now, this is why it's so profound. So I'm going to really simplify a very complex subject. When we talk about it being programmed into your DNA, so your genes are made up of DNA, and some of your genes are what we call expressive genes. What that means is they express out instructions. They send out instructions. Only instructions your body listens to. If you break a bone, the reason you're not walking around flapping your arm for 20 years is because your body looks at those instructions and that's how it repairs itself. If you have a sunburn, how does it get rid of the redness? If you have an illness, how do you get back to normal? It only looks at those instructions. So think about this. You're born, newborn baby, your epigenome is like a brand new CD. It's absolutely...
It's not scratched.
Not scratched. If you were listening to music, it would have this beautiful clarity. Everything would be crisp. Now, it starts to get little scratches on it. You can still hear good music. You can still make it out. But as time goes on and it gets more and more and more scratched, pretty soon you can't make out. You can't make out all of the notes. And it's the same way that happens with these instructions. You don't correct the same way.
Right.
Your skin doesn't repair. You see a line, you see a wrinkle, you see a brown spot. Same thing that happens internally. Your body's not the same.
Right, and I think it does respond. I've noticed this in clients that have moved into different climates, that, once they didn't tan very well or they didn't have the pigment, but then they moved into a warm climate and they come back and it's like the body knows what to do. It creates more melanocytes, so it kind of thickens and it takes on that, but what leaves behind. So that's interesting.
Well, it is. And think about it. It's really the sun, because you could be in, let's say, someplace like in the Nevada desert,
mm-hmm.
and it is 10 o'clock at night and the sun is not in the sky, but it's still 80 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
You won't pigment from the heat, that kind of heat.
Right.
It has to have that component, that light. And there's components in it, infrared, there's various spectrums of light. And so that is one of the primary factors. And so what the reason why retinoids are so profound, and this is not just me saying this is actual medical fact over the last 30, 40 years of medical research. Retinoids, putting on the right retinoid, not just any retinoid, but we're talking specifically about Luminate that has the retinol in it. It actually can correct instructions coming from your DNA. That's why it's so profoundly anti-aging. But when it does that, your skin functions differently. So
that's powerful.
Moving forward, it really makes a difference in terms of whether or not you're going to pigment, how you react, and how your body is able to repair that more fully.